With Alex Pavlovic, NBC Sports Bay Area. Giants have won 4 in a row, first time in several months. And I'll just ask you this, Alex. It's kind of how John Dickinson started the show. The Giants have action?
Yeah, by way of the schedule, I think, yeah, they do have some action here. I mean, this was always going to be, and it was funny, we talked to Evan Longoria about this last Monday when he got activated in San Diego, and I asked him, I was like, look, you guys are fully healthy now. It's pretty rare in August, and you look around the league, for them to be basically all the way there from a health perspective in terms of at least position players. And the schedule, aside from that San Diego series, really opens up here in August. We saw Oakland, Pittsburgh, Arizona. They go to Denver this weekend, and then Detroit. So this was an opportunity, and he's been around a long time, and he was like, yeah, it's kind of now or never for us. And obviously San Diego is disappointing, but these are bad teams they're playing, and they're healthy, and they should beat them. And to their credit, they have done that over the last week and a half.
Yeah, and I've even got them 9-1 going all the way back to the beginning of that Cubs series at the end of July. I know they got wrecked by the Dodgers before they played the A's, but 9-1 essentially against bad teams, which is something they hadn't been doing. I mean, couldn't you make the case that their year got derailed in part because they quit beating bad teams at a really high level?
Yeah, I think, the difference between this year and last year they just kind of beat up on everybody. And even you look at that Pirates series, I mean, that was a nail-biter, but ultimately they came away with the 3 wins. And they're not significantly better than these teams, but they are better than them. And so when they're not playing well and when they are not at full strength, which we saw at times in June and July, especially when they went to Arizona, they can get handled by these teams, and they look like one of them. But they still, when they're healthy, they should be better than them, and they're veterans, and they've been there. And, I think we saw that on Sunday. There's no panic there in the late innings. So they should be able to beat up on teams like this. And, again, you look ahead, Colorado and Detroit, like, this is a stretch where if they're going to get back within 2 or 3 games of the Padres, this is it.
Let me give you a hypothetical here, Alex. Let's say the Giants keep playing well. They make their run. They win 85 games. Let's say they end up 85-77, but they miss. They still wind up being one of the teams on the outside looking in. How do you think this season would be viewed at that point if that's the end result?
It would be a disappointment. I mean, not making the playoffs with an expanded field, for me, I think at any time, not just this year, but any years to come, like they've talked about that. They're like, look, you should be one of the top 6 teams in the National League, and especially coming off last year. Yeah, last year was a wild circumstance. Like, that's never going to happen again, but there was momentum last year, so I think that's a lot of where the disappointment has been this year, that they are a 500 team coming off of that. So I think if they miss that playoff spot, it's disappointing, and a lot of people are going to look in the mirror. I think a lot of people are going to be a little bit worried after that, and there's probably going to be a lot of roster shuffling because, it's a 4-game winning streak right now. They're still pretty far back in the playoff race, and they're chasing the Padres team that always has second half issues. But you kind of look at, I always kind of look at this division. It's the Dodgers division right now, and you look at what the Dodgers have done to them and how far ahead they are talent-wise, and what they've been able to do to the Giants without Buehler, without some of their other guys at times. They've had more injury issues than the Giants have, I think, when you look at, like, their top guys. So, for me, that would be where you go in the offseason. Like, if you miss the playoffs and you finish 20, 25, 30 games back of that Dodgers team, you have to sit down and figure things out.
Alex Pavlovic joining us on 95.7 The Game, covers the Giants for NBC Sports Bay Area. Is there any way you can kind of look back at where this team was at the beginning of the year? So last year they went 107 games, and if you're Farhan Zaidi or you're Gabe Kapler, look, you got some things went your way last year. Do you think to a man, to each of those guys, they look at this team right now and where they are, do you think they expected anything drastically different than where they're at now? Or do you think after kind of taking in the big picture of last year's 107 wins, they kind of maybe saw something like this coming?
I mean, they certainly saw regression coming, and they were open about it last year. Like, that was just, it really was a once in a 100 years thing for this group. I mean, even the championship teams were never that good in the regular season. The 2016 team was not that good. So It was extremely rare, and I think they all understood that, and that there was going to be regression. But I do think they would tell you that this has been disappointing, just because, more than anything, the defense, they built around a strong starting staff, and it has been a good starting staff. You kind of look at expected numbers and deeper numbers, and some of the things that strip the defense away from it. It's you could say it's been one of the top 2 or 3 rotations in baseball, and it certainly has 2 guys at the top who are as good as anybody. So the fact that they're sitting here, I think, there would be a lot of disappointment about the way it's gone defensively, and I think a lot of surprise. I mean, they certainly didn't see this coming. It was a pretty similar plan last year to play a lot of guys who are out of position and, make sure you have the bats out there and try to hit home runs. And this year it just went completely the other way. And the fact that they're, a bottom 2 defense in all of baseball, I think is probably would have shocked them if you told them that in March or April.
Alex, when you look at the minor league system, and it's been improved, but can you make a case that the fact that Joey Bart until recently hasn't been maybe as productive as they would have hoped, that Ramos isn't up and able to really contribute? Like where I guess what I'm asking is, there are a lot of really young guys in the low levels, but are there some guys that maybe should be farther along at this point that they are now concerned about, whether it's guys that should be closer to the majors than they are, or guys that should be maybe in the majors and contributing at a higher level?
Yeah, I think that's 100% fair. I mean, to me, obviously what's happened at the big league level has been a disappointment, but of equal importance for me is what's happened at the minor league level, and it was really a fast-rising farm system. And I throw Joey out. I mean, he had to replace Buster Posey. They threw a lot at him the first couple months, and it's just a huge adjustment for a young catcher. There's a reason you don't see what Buster did very often. Like, it's really, really hard, and I think he has proven over the last month that he's going to be a good player. So I throw him out of that equation. But, they were hoping Ramos would be pushing down the door at this point. I think they were hoping that Luciano would be in Double-A at this point. Obviously, it's been an injury for him, but you never want to see your top prospect miss, over 2 months now with a back injury. And then there are guys there in A-ball who have taken a step back. And I wrote this a couple weeks ago. I mean, that's why Juan Soto, it's part of the reason why Juan Soto's not here. They just didn't have the pieces to go get him, and they just didn't have those guys who are blue-chip prospects. And they hope they would have that at this point. So that, to me, is going to be a huge part of this offseason, and I think there's going to be a lot of internal discussion and a lot of evaluation on, how they're developing these guys, because it's great if you can bring in a Wade Jr. and a Gonzalez and all that, but you need those guys to be coming from your farm system for this to be sustainable and for you to have any hope of, kind of doing what the Dodgers have now done, where it's year after year and they just keep adding guys. So, yeah, it's a problem, and I think it's one they're going to, take a long look at in the offseason.
Alex, thank you so much as always. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, take it easy.